Hello everyone, welcome to World of Warship CS. This is going to be my first attempt at trying to do a voiceover for my gameplay for Battle for Wars. Definitely a big disclaimer beforehand, I'm not Jingles and it's probably not nearly as good if you try to compare, but let it be. So I'm in my tier 5 Japanese carrier, the Zuiho, and this is an okay matchup. You know, we do get to see a few tier 6s, but there's no tier 7s. And as far as the carrier situation is concerned, the enemy has another Zuiho. In terms of other ship capable of good AA, they have a New Mexico and I believe one Russian cruiser that's capable of the defensive AA. So definitely gotta watch out for those two guys. But as you might have heard, Japanese carriers are mostly purist attackers, especially at this tier. Their loadout is very attack heavy. As you can see, I have 4 squadrons. 1 dive bomber, 2 torp bombers, and 1 fighter group. So they're mostly attackers. The fighters are mostly used for defensive purposes, harassment, spotting, and so on and so forth. It's really not a setup for air superiority at all. As you can see, we're panning over my attack squadrons. These are my torp bombers. My other torp bomber group. And last but not the least, my A6 M2 Zero fighters. They're fast and agile, but in terms of durability, they're mediocre. So in any sort of sustained fighting situation, they can be taken out fairly quickly, unfortunately. And as you can see, I'm not one of those camper clickers, for the lack of a better word. I'm relocating. And the Japanese carriers are fairly good for that because they're fast.
Destination reached.
You know, by moving, you're kind of preventing the enemy from being able to carrier snipe you. Because whether you're talking about destroyers or enemy aircraft, they'll almost certainly first and foremost come to where they suspect you have spawned. And sometimes some of the derpier carrier drivers might even remain stationary for much of the game, making themselves a sitting duck. Here I am actually launching an attack against enemy New Mexico. Originally I wanted to sneak by along the edge of the map and try to get to the backside of the enemy and try to damage or take out their carrier early, but I had to scrap that plan because I saw enemy fighters near my bombers, and in real life as well as in game, bombers are particularly vulnerable before they have dropped their payload because they're heavily laden and slow and vulnerable. And here's a very undesirable situation. I have taken some casualties with my bombers. The New Mexico was really a target of opportunity in that I just needed to get rid of my ordnance so that my bombers can survive. Meanwhile, another bad move, unfortunately, was I had to force my fighters to engage the enemy fighters without trying to go for a strafing run. And also, unfortunately, within the defensive AA range of the enemy New Mexico. So my fighters, while engaging the enemy fighter, took more damage, but it had to be done because if I didn't do that, then the enemy fighters would not just get off the hook of my bombers, and the casualty would be immense. And you know, as a Japanese carrier, as soon as you round your bombers, you're toothless, you're hopeless, and you're fairly helpless. You know, you're not going to be useful for your team anymore at that point. Another reason why I went for New Mexico was because he was, whether AFK or, you know, jump onto the game slowly, that he was just barely moving. So that made him an easier torp target, and indeed, he took 4 torps. And I do believe that caused some flatting, and also I think that damaged his rudder. And here you can see how quickly the Japanese strike aircrafts are able to rearm and reload and launch again. I do have the tier 2 captain skill for the torp bombers, but once again, the torp bombers are absolutely key to carrier gameplay, especially Japanese carriers. And our friendly Farragut is desperately trying to engage New Mexico, but he's trying to chase down the enemy battleship with torps from behind. I don't know if that was a smart idea. And his 2 spreads of 8 torps completely missed. So that was a boss job. And he's getting shot at by both the New Mexico and an enemy Kuma, which is a tier 4 Japanese cruiser. But actually, aside from poor AA and poor armor, that ship has really good speed, really good maneuverability, good guns, and good torps. And surprisingly, even for tier 4, he actually carries a catapult fighter, which actually helps in case the guy ever comes under airstrike. And now I'm trying to scissor torp the enemy New Mexico, because he's the leading enemy capital ship, and he's actually probably the closest enemy unit to my carrier. So I'm not taking any chances, just simply for the sake of self-preservation. I went for him. And see, here's the magic of scissor torp. Even if you actually suck at it, some of it's gonna hit. It's almost like trying to shoot him with a shotgun. And as you can see, the New Mexico turns really well, even though he's pretty slow in a straight line. But unlucky for him, he took 1 torp in the stern and 1 torp in the bow. He had low health left after the torp strike, but he then subsequently flooded to death. As you're gonna see over and over again, the bow and stern of ships, even heavily armored battleships, are either unarmored or poorly armored. Meanwhile, my other torps that were aimed at, or rather hit him along his armor bulge or torpedo bulge, didn't cause any flooding. Meanwhile, I tried to do a strafing run on his fighter unit, botched it completely because obviously I'm a carrier noob. And in that process, the enemy not only dodged my shot, but he managed to start damaging my fighters. And I'm already down by 1 fighter, and there's a desperate dogfight ongoing. Unfortunately, I'm losing. At the same time, I'm trying to turn my ship around as I'm sailing closer to the border of the map. Meanwhile, the enemy fighter has almost certainly spotted my ship. So I want to relocate again. I don't want his fighter to effectively spot for the rest of his team as well as his strike aircrafts. And as you can see there, the tail gunners for my dive bombers actually shot down one of his fighters. So good job to that guy. My team is still down by 1 ship. I thought we still had a chance, but the situation on the western side of the map seems to be chaotic. I'm kind of unable to help because enemy surface units are getting too close to a comfort on the east side, and I have to first and foremost stop this push. As you can see, my Group 4 was actually redirected to the edge of the map. That's something you do to prevent a direct return flight to your carrier, because sometimes they'll either give away the enemy your position, which in my case end up being a lost cause, or much rather it will cause your plane to overflight enemy surface ships and take damage from surface ship AA. And being a Zuiho with a fairly limited hangar capacity, every single aircraft you have counts. So you know, for every plane you lose, you're never gonna get it back. And the enemy Königsberg is actually trying to cap B, and I don't believe any of my surface allies are effectively dealing with him right now. So I sent in my dive bombers in an attempt to try to reset the cap. Obviously my dive bombers aren't exactly powerful, so even if I get him, it's probably just one hit, 1.5k damage, maybe some fire damage, and he'll fix it and that'll be it. Obviously, as you might have heard, the aerial bombs in World of Warships aren't armor-piercing bombs, they're just simply general-purpose high-explosive bombs. So, you know, obviously the enemy ships are layered like a piece of lasagna, and even cruisers have some deck armor, so it's just gonna splash them like a derp gun in World of Tanks would do, unfortunately. Meanwhile, I'm going after the enemy New York. Dive bombers end up getting directed to him instead of the König, because the König died. As you can see, the enemy was lit on fire with one of the bomb hits. He foolishly used his repair ability to put out the fire, so his repair ability is on cooldown. And now my torps are in, so in case he floods, he has no means to stop his flooding. And now the enemy took 2 torp hits. One hit a midship along the armor belt and torpedo bulge, no flooding, but the other torp actually hit him in the bow, and he started flooding. Here we go again, another torp strike. Obviously I'm not launching the torps manually because I'm a noob. And the enemy is maneuvering violently, so it's kind of hard for me to target him. And fortunately for him, he took 2 more torp hits, and I believe more flooding. This time it's actually one in the bow and one in the stern. And he is flooding. Meanwhile, I'm trying to sail back to the backside of the island in hopes of getting some more cover. As you can see, the friendly surface fleet has completely collapsed. So if I can put myself in cover, I might survive longer, even though in this case the Zuiho has terrible armor. So the armor will not save me, or my secondary guns will not save me neither. I just have to try to blunt the enemy advance, and if failing at that, try to do as much damage as possible.
Group 4, ready for takeoff.
And luckily for myself, should I say, the enemy New York actually floods to death also. So that's 2 enemy capital ships, arguably 2 of their heaviest units. Heavily armed, heavily armored, and I just sent them to the bottom of the drink. Unfortunately, my team, is losing. The friendly Congo is trying to engage the enemy Minakaze and not having much success. And there goes the enemy torps. Long lance from Japanese destroyer. And he has low health, but looks like he's flooding, unfortunately. And there he goes. I hope he took down the Emperor's portrait before he flipped over. Go read about it. You know, there's a lot of materials on that on Wikipedia, of all places. You know, it's general operating procedures for the Japanese crew to take on the Emperor's portrait before they go down. And now I'm going after the enemy Kirov, and I'm going for Caesar torps, because I know the Kirov is very maneuverable and very fast. And health-wise, he needs to take 2 torps in order to be taken out. And right now I'm going for him just simply because he is the closest enemy to me. So he's, of all the surface units they have, the single one that's most likely to do damage, and the one that is of the biggest threat to me. And Kirov took 2 torps and died. And for some reason, despite the fact that he had no armor, he didn't flood at all. Meanwhile, I'm mostly defenseless against enemy strike aircraft, even though my ship does have some dual-purpose 5-inch guns as well as those crappy 25mm autocannons, you know, that screw the Japanese so badly for during the war. And by the look of it, I shot down a few enemy aircraft, but I simply got swarmed. And the reason why I'm not really moving that fast and just simply trying to reverse is because as soon as I move out the cover of the island, I'll get shot at by enemy surface unit anyways. And I do believe at this time I actually send out my last wave of strike aircraft in hope of doing more damage to the enemy. But obviously there's no stopping to that Minakaze that's behind me. He's a destroyer and I'm out of dive bombers. And he must be pretty stupid to take a torp. Here he comes. I don't know what to say, man. Well, that was a moment of silence for everybody that didn't make it, including myself. You know, I'm sure I'll probably drink a lot of sake before I actually go down. Even though, quite frankly, a lot of times I kind of hope that, you know, let's be honest, people on your team should probably be dragged outside and shot for just utter incompetence and negligence. But hey, welcome to wargaming. Just another day. As you can see, I pretty much single-handedly sunk 2 of the enemy's heaviest units. 110k damage for a tier 5 carrier. That's not even top tier. And I got completely outmatched in terms of the air fight.